Good morning. Welcome home. Just on time for this lovely sunrise. The way the flies are acting right now, it just feels like it's going to be an incredibly hot day today. So here we have the sun rising over the Golan in its majestic beauty. You're right, it's good to be here. We got from Australia to Alaska, to Mexico, to across Europe, Hong Kong, Singapore. It's great you're all here. I just missed our little birds there. Welcome everybody. Got lovely, lovely sunrise. It's going to be a gorgeous day again. Right now it's so pale. Let me zoom in a little for you. There's no trace of it on the water yet because it's so weak, but it's growing stronger. That little baby, a couple of weeks old, a couple of months old, a couple of years old, still relatively incredibly weak. But what an impact in the world that little baby will make. And that older person growing weak. Maybe there's illness, maybe there's corona, but the glory awaiting us. Our weakness doesn't define us. It's an important thread to take into account of our reality, but it doesn't define us. It absolutely doesn't define us. The moon is still up here, people. Look at it right there on the left of the center of the screen. It's the waning moon. There are seasons. There are times. And times are always a-changing, even though sometimes it looks like they're steady, but there's no way they're steady. There's so many things changing, you know. Think of a family. Grandma's getting a little older, kids are getting bigger, the grandkids are going to school, they're learning, becoming a smart aleck for a little while maybe. Time is never stopping. Niece or nephews getting married. There are more in-laws, more outlaws. Culture is subjected to change, maybe less noticeably or sometimes very speedily. Times are changing. And here we are. The important thing is that we're being transformed. And it doesn't matter if we're weak today, because God has a huge plan for us. A plan for glory. People, we're reading these days the letter to the Corinthians. First letter to the Corinthians. It's an amazing letter. Oh, I see something nice in the water over here. It's an amazing letter. It's so concrete. So many concrete situations and issues have to be dealt with in this letter. And we see that these first disciples of Jesus in the port town of Corinth, a very large and big, busy port town, a key address in the Roman Empire with all its activities as a commercial center, but then all this human society there, you know the way poor towns are. There's everything in the poor town. Humanity expresses all of its marvels of trade and commerce and exchange and enrichment, mutual enrichment, and it's also some places of great depravity. So Corinth was no different. And then the gospel is coming in there for the first time. You know, I think, if I remember rightly, Paul came to Corinth around the year 51 to evangelize. And the first letter to the Corinthians maybe 5-6 years later. And there we see the process that Jesus talked about. A process of how the gospel is like leaven transforming society. How it's like light coming into the world. And you know, first of all, there's a little light. Maybe it's a lot of light that changes a lot of things, but it takes time for all the dark nooks and crannies to be lit up. Like later on, people, right now the Golan Heights is just a grey mass of hill in front of us. But when the sun is up here and at our backs this evening, that's a beautiful moment. I must do that for you sometime. So the sun is, let's say, setting, and the whole Golan is lit up. You can see every valley from here. And we're like about 8 or 10 miles across from the hills there. And you can see and you can even see shadows caused by some of the sides onto the mountainside. You can see the vegetation. You can see houses. You can see so much detail that we cannot absolutely see right now. And so the light when the gospel reaches a culture, sometimes it takes centuries. I would even say, from our perspective, after 2 millennia, it takes millennia for it to penetrate culture, and especially wayward ways. You know, the world went down very tortuous paths. Once we left paradise, once Cain was killing Abel, you know, the damage after this. Good morning, Boker Tov.
Boker Tov, good morning. Have a nice day.
Well, since you were friendly, we'll let you say hello.
Hello?
One second.
Where are you from?
Where am I from? Well, the thing is, where are all these people from?
All these people are from?
They're from Australia to Alaska,
Wow.
from Mexico to Finland, from South Africa to Ireland.
It's nice.
So it's wonderful you were out here doing your exercise,
Yeah.
and you were taking some nice pictures.
Yeah.
God bless you.
God bless you. Have a nice day.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov to all the people in all the world. Be healthy. Care yourself. Thank you.
I can't believe I couldn't get him on the camera. Oh, there he is. I had him off the camera there. Sorry about that. And you can hear Soter over there barking. So people, I'm kind of preparing you for very tough stuff that's in the readings today. But it's actually all over the place in our world today, this type of issues. And it's about sexual morality. And the light of the gospel penetrates our entire heart, our mind, our soul, our criteria. And there was paradise that was created, and then it got messed up in many ways throughout history. And things happened, and people get hurt. People get wounded. People go down wrong paths. Sometimes they try to justify them. So in this particular reading today, Paul is calling out a man, and let me say the word directly, it's a hard word, living in an incestuous relationship. And you know what? 2,000 years ago, John the Baptist lost his head because of this. He called out Herod for living with his brother's wife. And I don't spend any time really on all the stuff that's out there on the internet, thanks be to God. And I'm thankful to the Lord that I never opened one of those type of videos that some people send around, all this junk stuff. And there are terrible pathways that people are going through today, many people. And the light of the gospel still will want to come in there. And it took years, decades, centuries to change many things. It took a long time to get rid of slavery. It took a long time for the gospel to penetrate sufficient minds to overcome that. And it always recurs because we have more slavery today than we probably had even at the time of the Roman Empire, in the sense of all the trafficking of human beings for horrible things. They were enslaved just for working. Today it's amazing. And also for working. It's amazing the exploitation of people. And then we have issues of rights, of human rights. It takes a long time for the light of the gospel not only to show us the path, but for the warmth of the gospel to reach our hearts and soften them and bring them into line with God's plan. So don't get scandalized when you read Corinthians today, because it's going on all over the place today. And even don't get scandalized with what's going on today in the sense of taking scandal. The word scandal is very interesting, and the sin of scandal. There are two ways to sin, to commit the sin of scandal. One way is to give scandal, obviously incredibly serious. And Jesus said, and maybe he said it here near the lake, and he said it's better if a millstone was tied around your neck. Now look at this big rock over here beside the tree. I'm separated by the fence and I'm not going out there this morning because we have a little goal to accomplish time-wise. But look at this stone. Now that stone is pretty heavy. I imagine it's well over a ton weight, maybe more than that, maybe 2 tons weight, I have no idea. And a millstone is bigger than that. At least as big as that. And that tied around your neck and go out there and swim, good luck. And that was the rhetorical image Jesus used for anybody who gives scandal. But then there's another big danger, and that is to take scandal. And that's also a sin. It's a complete no-no. It's so destructive. When you give scandal, you're destroying others. When you take scandal, you're destroying yourself. So the easiest example is somebody jumps off a 100-floor building into a huge furnace. I think of 9/11. You know? Well, somebody jumps off. I don't have to jump off. 9/11 is not a good example, sorry. But you don't have to jump into a fire because somebody else did. Unless you're saving somebody's life. And that's not scandal at all. That's self-sacrifice to save somebody's life. So, taking scandal means I will also commit the sin. This guy got drunk, so I can get drunk. This guy gets divorced, so I can get divorced. That's taking scandal. And we can't do that either. So when you read the letter today of Paul to the Corinthians, you'll see that this is pretty heavy stuff. And Paul is very strong in his language. In fact, why don't we just take a look at it? So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And he's going to deal with a lot of other issues, and we are already this past week dealing with the issue of division between Paul and Apollos, the people who want to make parties inside the church, like division, divisive parties. Brothers and sisters, it is widely reported that there is immorality among you, an immorality of a kind not found even among pagans. And you can read it to find out exactly what's going on. And you are inflated with pride, like you think you're great Christians? Should you not rather have been sorrowful? You have to separate the one who did this terrible deed. There's a lot of very strong language in here, and it goes beyond the capacity of our little session here to go and explain it all. And be patient. And there's a lot of context. One of the things about the letter to the Corinthians is we have a ton of information about the life of the first Christians, but we lack a lot of the context to understand all of the things. But there's sufficient clarity to understand plenty. So then don't push things to the limit when you're reading it. Try to glean what's there, because it's a window, a peephole into first century Christianity that's 5 or 6 years old in a huge port town. And the gospel is beginning to reach the conscience and raise the people from where they were to transformation into their great calling. Your boasting is not appropriate. Do you not know that a little yeast leavens all the dough? Clear out the old yeast, so you may become a fresh batch of dough. A fresh batch of dough, inasmuch as you are unleavened. For our Paschal Lamb Christ has been sacrificed. Therefore let us celebrate the feast not with the old yeast, the yeast of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. People, we're going to take a little stroll, and we're going to do with this verse of prayer from Psalm 5. Lead me in your justice, Lord. Lord, you delight not in wickedness. Lead me in your justice, Lord. Let all who take refuge in you, Lord, be glad and exult forever. Protect them that you may be the joy of those who love your name. Lead me in your justice, Lord. So we're living in a huge port town, and it's called the world. And we use the word portal today for the internet, so many portals. And the whole world is at the fingertips of so many people today. And there's such an incredible trafficking of everything. And the exposure of children and of any age group, because none of us needs to put our head in cow dung or pig dung, excuse the language. And the smelliest was the chicken dung. I always remember that on the farm. We don't need to do that. We don't need to put our head in the sewer. So there's a huge calling here to return to the great creation that God has made in us, the extraordinary gift of sexuality. But it's within an order. And the light of the gospel renews our hearts and souls and minds. And Paul was a great champion of this. Look at the fruitfulness here. There you see the moon above the palm tree on the left. And you have all this fruit, all these dates. We have other ones that are much further along. Maybe I'll show you tomorrow, God willing, or one of these days. Let's turn around and see it from here. See this beautiful morning light. Our future restaurant, God willing, need volunteers here, people, and generous people to help us to build it. Beautiful Magdala mosaic map. Don't forget to check that out. It's right there on the Magdala website, magdala.org, which is also posted, magdala.org, in the description on the video each morning. So you can find it there. Just scroll down in the description afterwards. So I'm just walking up through the garden this morning because actually I have an appointment right now with a wonderful gentleman in his 70s who gave us a lovely talk last night about Jerusalem. The people love the swimming pool here. I should have showed it to you from the other angle. The guests are very happy to have this refreshment here in the heat. You see, that's what happens. A beautiful garden, somebody's commenting. So you just imagine the work that went into this garden. Actually, a year ago it wasn't really there. Because maybe about September, October, we were planting it, if I remember correctly, or about a year ago. The inauguration was in November, and it has matured a lot since that time. So our heart and soul is like that, and we need the garden, and we need to trim, need to water, need to take care of it, and it becomes a beautiful garden. It doesn't happen by chance. And the work of God in our lives is not by chance. And He wants to bring out a beauty, a joy, a holiness, a happiness. And our world has a lot to learn today. Our world is madly in search of happiness, but very sad. Indulging immensely in pleasure, but not content. That's the water hitting that lamp when it swings around. People, I'm going to let you go today, just a couple of minutes early. And we have a lot to chew on. You can go and see the readings, check it out, and nourish your soul and your mind and your heart. And I would say a big prayer for us today is to engage in the great wealth of the gospel for our lives. And the amount of work that God is doing in us, the garden He's bringing to flourish. And maybe there are some big weeds in our lives that we need to take care of. So let's ask for the grace to listen to the 10 Commandments, very basic stuff, and listen to the Beatitudes, Matthew chapter 5, to listen to the core message that Christ brings to us for our lives, because He wants us to have the most beautiful garden in our hearts, in our souls, in our families, in our world. God bless you today.